Video coverage of IT Expo is brought to you by Content Boost, the content marketing specialists. Amplify your sales today.
Hi, Eric Lanasker at IT Expo in Miami, Florida. On the program with me today, Ingate's Steve Johnson. Steve, thanks for joining me.
My pleasure as always, Eric.
So, yeah, you know, as like you said, as always, great to have you here on the program. Great that you're joining us here. One of the things that I'm kind of curious about, and part of it, as we were just talking about, is there's a lack of recent market statistics on the growth and the adoption rates currently of SIP and SIP trunking.
Right.
What have you seen in the market, just in terms of how your business is doing?
Right. Well, just in general, our business is doing quite well, actually. Our fiscal year begins in July, and for that 6 months compared to the same period last year, our sales are up significantly. And not only our sales in rough terms in revenue, but also the number of sessions that we are selling on an average basis has gone up dramatically as well. So we're seeing, I think, what I hope is a trend in the market, that maybe we've passed that inflection point of early adoption and crossing the chasm and so forth, and we're beginning to see it getting into the majority. Beginning to see the majority of companies now moving to SIP trunking and seeing the benefits that come with that. The economic benefits, the productivity benefits, all of it combined to give them a better experience. And to prepare them for unified communications as well.
Certainly. Get back to one point that you just mentioned. Are you saying that you're experiencing upstream growth in terms of size of the customer?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, the customers, a few years ago we could have had this discussion and we might have talked about companies installing 25, 50, maybe 100 SIP trunking sessions. Now we're quoting, I was just working on a quote earlier today for 5,000 sessions into an organization. We've got lots of quotes out there and have booked a lot of business this year with companies who are doing thousands of SIP trunking sessions, which is great because it means SIP trunking is getting into the larger organizations and people have begun to realize the true benefits that it brings to their company.
At least from what you're seeing in your customer base, is there a single benefit that organizations are focused on?
I think there are probably two today. One is economics, and that's the
Sure.
biggest one that drives most every business decision, is the economics, and the return on investment is just so dramatic that it can't be ignored. And people are moving to SIP trunking because they can get better prices, they can recover their investments much faster. I think the second thing that drives people to SIP trunking is really disaster recovery as well, because they can have a disaster recovery, a secondary site that can be set up for a reasonable price, and they can therefore have the ability to fail over to that site if the first site should experience a catastrophe of some form. Either the equipment goes down or something even worse than that. So I think people realize that business continuity can be achieved much more easily with SIP trunking and the methods or the architecture of the internet than it can be with a traditional phone system.
Wouldn't, just to play devil's advocate for a moment then, wouldn't, on the DR side in particular, wouldn't a hosted type solution or a cloud-based solution be an alternative?
Well, obviously a cloud solution is definitely an alternative these days, and I think that cloud computing and cloud telephony are sort of the buzzwords of the times, and certainly some people are moving in that direction. But especially larger organizations who have their own infrastructure, who have their own IT specialists and departments, who can manage these kinds of implementations, do seem to be staying with the on-site or on-premise model. And those are the companies that we're seeing actually doing these kinds of large installations of SIP trunking.
Is that because they are simply reluctant to move to a hosted or a cloud model, or is it a function of trying to maximize on their existing investments?
It's partly both.
Okay.
I think the cloud solution is one that makes a lot of sense for a lot of companies, small companies especially, I think, because they can get much more for their buck. than if they were to try to replicate what's available on the cloud in their own organization. But for larger companies and even some small companies who just don't trust the cloud, on-premise remains as a viable option, and we offer them that opportunity as well as others to have that option and to still gain the benefits of cost reduction as well as disaster recovery.
So you mentioned that the word buzzwords. I think certainly one of the big buzzwords out there, WebRTC.
Yes.
Something you at Ingate have started touching on as well. What are you seeing in terms of interest? How's it changing what Ingate's had to do?
Well, the interest is starting to build. We have approached a number of our partners, companies with complementary products to ours, PBX vendors, endpoint vendors, and the like. And we see a tremendous interest in WebRTC, which means to me that they are seeing or hearing their customers tell them that WebRTC is something that they're interested in and will begin to invest in as it becomes much more real or much more baked, if you will, in the marketplace. What Ingate has set about to do is to create what we call a PBX companion. So just like we did for SIP, we are able to offer companies the ability to enter into the world of WebRTC without investing heavily in their own product. So we create the gateway that actually combines SIP and WebRTC to enable people to offer that kind of service into an already SIP-enabled environment. We add in security because WebRTC is always encrypted according to the standard. And we also will have available on our product, which is built on top of our separator, our SBC, we will incorporate into that a turn server. The turn server is what in WebRTC world actually causes or allows the traversal of the firewall through the turn server. Many times that turn server is really literally in the cloud, and its management or its ownership is unknown. For many companies, that becomes a security risk, and by putting the turn server inside a device which they control, then they manage who is actually able to gain access to their company via WebRTC. But it does one other very important thing. Because the PBX companion will see all of the traffic and all of the packets, because it goes through that turn server, we will actually be able to prioritize the WebRTC packets. Now, one might say that's not a very big deal, but a lot of the congestion occurs within the local area network, and if we can prioritize those packets, especially for something like video, which does suffer from jitter and delay, and it's very apparent that it suffers, if we can accomplish that, and we will, then those video sessions will be much more clear, and the take rate and the utility of WebRTC will be even higher than what many people are now predicting. So we think that putting all of this together into that device which sits at the edge of the network will make WebRTC a much more viable option, and as well make it available to many companies sooner rather than later.
What, over the course of the next couple of days, you're once again putting on your SIP Trunking Unified Communications Summit here at ITEXPO. What is there a key theme or a key message that your event this time around is looking to get across?
I think that there are two, because really there are two focuses. One is the WebRTC and the other is SIP Trunking. SIP Trunking kicks off tomorrow, and the message in SIP Trunking is really, SIP Trunking is now to the point where it's quite easy to install. And the economics remain so positive that most companies ought to be considering it as what they do next in the form of communications. So tomorrow we're actually going to come at it from a 50,000 foot level to start, with a definition of SIP and SIP Trunking, followed by Rich Tarani and others from TMC who will give a deeper dive into the economics and the impact of SIP Trunking on organizations. And from there, we'll dive even deeper into the PBX, into the service provider component, into the session border controller component, and finally, we'll even address the resellers in the audience how do you really go about selling SIP trunking? So tomorrow's seminar is really all about SIP trunking is real, it's here, it's something that you all should be doing and advising your customers to do. On Thursday, we will in fact focus on unified communications and spend a lot of time on WebRTC. And I think that if there's one theme within the Thursday agenda, it is that while WebRTC isn't quite to the point where SIP is, and we don't expect that probably for a couple of years, certainly the components are there. The WebRTC itself creates a benefit for companies that they really should start to explore. And we hope to bring people up to the podium who can actually explain what those benefits are and how those things can be implemented today.
Excellent. Good luck, Steve. Thank you so much for joining us here again.
Thanks again, Eric.
I'm Eric Lanasker at ITEXPO.
Video coverage of ITEXPO is brought to you by Content Boost, the content marketing specialists. Amplify your sales today.